2026 NFL season is getting ready to start, which means it is time to update our NFL playoff bracket and Super Bowl predictions, as promised to you back in the summer. I think we have the Rams, which is clearly the most dominant team coming into the year, especially if they get Aaron Donald back, but does that mean they're going to win it all? We have several teams that are going to be completely missing the playoffs that were in the playoffs last year, as happens every year. Are Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs really in trouble? Are they going to have a bounce back? And can the most dominant player in football, Josh Allen, finally reach the pinnacle? Also, many other storylines, such as Lamar's health, having a new coach, Joe Burrow, can he finally stay healthy? And then do we have any sleeper teams which potentially could crash and make it in? And is this finally the year that Dallas puts it all together? No, but we'll wait on that here in a little bit. Thank you guys. Welcome back to BaldFather Bets. Appreciate you very much. Getting ready to have a great another season. Just ask that you guys do your part. We'll always keep our picks free that have been profitable for the past 2 years. Just ask that you help us grow the channel. All right, so let's take a look at what we had back in the summer. Ultimately have the Bengals and the Rams matching up in the Super Bowl. And we had several standout facts, I think, from this one. We had the Chargers and we had the Colts making the playoffs. However, we did not have the Houston Texans making the playoffs. We had the Jacksonville Jaguars winning that division. Had the Chiefs winning, had the Ravens in, had the Ravens advancing all the way to the AFC Championship game. Had the Lions taking the #1 overall seed together with the Bills. And then ultimately the Rams making it to the Super Bowl. Also had the Seattle Seahawks completely missing the playoffs, coming down to a tiebreak and losing that tiebreak with the Philadelphia Eagles for the 7th seed. And we had the Washington Commanders taking the NFC East as the 3 seed. So let's go in and let's take a look at kind of some of the changes that we made as we get in here now. Okay, so let's start out on the AFC side. No change to our top overall seed or their record, the Buffalo Bills. No change to the #2 seed with the Cincinnati Bengals. That's saying Joe Burrow has a healthy season and really loving the changes that they made defensively, especially across the defensive line. Going with more of a run-stopping interior unit based instead of paying all of their money to Trey Hendrickson. I really like what the Bengals have this year. Love what the Bills have and love the fact that the Bills are in what is by far the weakest division. And I am extremely low on the Patriots. Like I don't think there's another person that I've seen in YouTube, sports media, anything that is low on the Patriots as I am. I essentially give the Patriots like 0% chance to make the playoffs. Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see what happens. Still have the Chiefs in at the 3 seed, have the Ravens in at the 6 seed. We did make a switch here, though. We have the Houston Texans winning the division, and then Jacksonville getting that 7 seed. Colts no longer making the playoffs. I think I was a little too low on Texans offensively and not giving enough credit to how good that defensive unit is with those 2 edge rushers. Essentially the ability that they have to control any game with which they get out ahead. They remind me, and they don't have Peyton Manning at quarterback, but they remind me a little bit of what the Colts did defensively back in the Manning days where they had Mathis and Freeney. And essentially, if they got their whole thing was Peyton Manning will get a lead within the first 3 drives. Then Mathis and Freeney are going to go tee off on your quarterback. Houston built a little bit stronger defensively overall than they are on offense. And obviously, C.J. Stroud, not Peyton Manning, but it's one of the most elite pass rushes in recent NFL memory. And it was a little, I think, naive of me to think that just because maybe CJ struggled or maybe offensively struggled or even with some of the injuries that they're having at wide receiver, that they were going to completely miss the playoffs. So I have the Colts missing again, especially with some of the struggles that we've been seeing from them offensively. Jacksonville into the 7 seed, having a little bit of a bounce back to earth after they get a little bit of a tougher schedule this year, and then the Texans in at 4. Chargers in at 5 seed, no change there. Love what they have with Harbaugh. Hate that they lost Minter, but think that ultimately they'll be fine. And if they can get the tackle position shored up, where they were completely not healthy last year, then ultimately think that if that team had Minter last year, defensive coordinator, and they had healthy tackles, there's a very good chance the Chargers either play in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks or win the Super Bowl. That team was built to compete then, and they lost Minter, which really, really sucks, because if you guys have seen my NFL defensive coordinator rankings, then you'll know what I think of him. But I guess I should say defensive play caller rankings. But even without Minter, I still think that they're going to be a very good team this year. Then on the NFC side, no change with the Lions as the top seed, having what is just a historically easy schedule preseason. I think for any schedule to end up being like as easy as the Patriots were last year, you have to have certain things go certain ways throughout the season. Like by the end of the season, the Patriots were playing teams that had backup quarterbacks, fired head coaches, etc. So you can't ever predict something like that preseason. But in terms of strength of schedule, there are three that really stand out preseason. They're the Lions or the Bengals, and they're the New Orleans Saints. And then two that stand out as being so difficult, which is hilarious because they're the Dolphins and the Cardinals, which are like vying for number 1 overall pick with the Jets. But anyway, so like the Lions' chances to lock in that top overall seed. I'm going to come to the schedule here in a second because I got some comments in my last one that were just, I'm going to call them uninformed. So I'm going to explain a little bit why I take into account schedule so much preseason. Then we have the Rams in the second seed. We then swapped the 3 seed with the Dallas Cowboys now winning that division. Come back to that in a second. No change with the Packers, no change with the Saints or 49ers. And we swapped the Seahawks for the Eagles in the 7 seed, with the Seahawks winning that tiebreak because they have the head-to-head victory over the Eagles. We'll talk about Dallas first. Washington losing Laramie Tunsil. I haven't seen a more impactful preseason injury yet for any team in the NFL. That is so massive, especially for a team that has offensive line issues and has that side shored up. Then you have Jaden Daniels coming back off of injury. I think losing Tunsil is one of the biggest things. Then also, it's hard to like what you're hearing out of the Jaden Daniels camp and them preseason and kind of that team preseason, a little bit the way things feel there. And then as I dug more into Dallas, it's hard not to like this team. And then Dak and his track record against NFC East opponents when healthy, getting him back fully healthy, it's very hard to not like this Dallas Cowboys team. So I'm with them, and we're riding them in the 3 seed. Then ultimately with the Seahawks, I'm not stepping back from my stance that the Seahawks lost an immense amount of production from their Super Bowl team. But as you look more into what they brought in this offseason, and now the fact that they're getting Terry and Arnold in, and then another cornerback name mistakes me right now, I don't think they're going to fall all the way out of the playoffs. I'm expecting a bounce back to earth from Sam Darnold, especially without having Kenneth Walker there in the run game. I think Kenneth Walker masked a lot of their interior offensive line issues last season with his ability to bounce and cut outside. Think about the opening touchdown against the Rams in the NFC Championship game where he was dead to rights in the backfield but had such one cut ability to the outside, which is essentially his elite trait, that it was perfect for that team. I do think that you're going to see them take a step back offensively without offensive coordinator, without him, and then essentially JSN trying to take that next step, but also JSN going to command the defensive coordinator's attention at every step of the way this upcoming season. So while I am still a little bit lower on the Seahawks than I was last year, where I think like week 3 or week 4 we gave them to you as this team's going to win the Super Bowl. You should have that futures ticket. I can't have them missing the playoffs all the way. And with what's been coming out of Philadelphia and offensively what they've been doing and how horrendous they look and how they look like, not only have they not taken any steps forward from previous year, that they've regressed. And I've always been a Jalen Hurts sucks person, and I have maintained that. Like when he won the Super Bowl, I maintained he wasn't very good. Last year I maintained he wasn't very. I maintained Jalen Hurts is not good this entire time. I just think the Eagles have a loaded roster top to bottom. I think they have one of the best rosters in the NFL after the Rams. But I think it's gotten to a point where like Hurts is so bad that like that they can't overcome that. I think a lot got masked in terms of how bad the QB situation was in Philly last year because of how bad the QB situation was in Minnesota last year. Minnesota didn't have a QB situation last year. They had people playing quarterback. So with that, then we have the Seahawks overtaking the Eagles in that spot. Okay, and then we made some changes into who are going to win these games now upcoming, especially with some of the swapping around that we have in the teams. So taking a look at the divisional round, we have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. Joe Burrow against Trevor Lawrence. And as much as I am an absolute Trevor Lawrence schlong gobbler, I can't have him walking into Cincy and beating Joe Burrow. I like the Bengals in this situation. I think Jacksonville defensively would struggle a lot with the Bengals passing attack in that matchup. So we have the Bengals moving on. I made a swap here as well. We now have the Chiefs beating the Ravens. I think the Ravens are probably a year away under Minter, the way that McDonald was with the Seahawks, where it was really year 2 where they took off. I know they've gone all in this season, and I know previous to the Rams doing what they did with Myles Garrett, now potentially getting Aaron Donald back, they were the Super Bowl odds-on favorites just ahead of the Bills. And everyone really likes their roster. I'm struggling a little bit with will Lamar stay healthy again. I think maybe you bounce back to earth with a little bit of his injury history and how those things work. And at the end of the day, when I realized that I was picking the Ravens to go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs, with which in that game Chiefs would probably be a 2.5 point favorite. And then you're looking at what Mahomes does as a favorite of 3 or less in games or an underdog. I struggled with that mightily, and I couldn't do it, and ultimately have Andy Reid and the Chiefs and Mahomes moving on. Then with the Houston Texans and Los Angeles Chargers, I think, which would be one of the more underrated games of the playoff weekend. I think the Chargers, if they stay healthy at tackle with Alt and Slater, I believe that they could be the absolute kryptonite to the way the Texans have built their team. I like the Chargers a lot in that matchup. So I have the Chargers moving on. So it'd be Bills, Chargers, and Bengals, Chiefs in the next round. Take a look at the NFC wildcard, where the Rams over the Seahawks, and I think what would be an absolute banger of a game being played in Los Angeles, divisional matchup, third time that they would match up. We get the same thing that we got last year, where those two teams played each other 3 times. They're the 2 best teams in the NFL, 7th and 9th best team all time, DVOA. In what is one of my favorite NFL games ever played in that NFC Championship game. This time I have the Rams getting the win. I think it would be an extremely close game. I think if the Seahawks were to win that one, they could go on to win the Super Bowl again, because you're talking about now a team that's had time to kind of cycle through their new additions. They have a new offensive coordinator who's now gelling with quarterback. And I mean, I like what they brought in an offensive coordinator too, so it's not like I think they're going to be bad. I just think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. But ultimately, that Rams roster is, I mean, if they stay healthy, it's going to be very hard for anyone to beat them, especially in Los Angeles. It's going to be very difficult. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Green Bay Packers. Out of any match in the wild card round, I struggled with this one the most. I am not someone who believes that just because like Dallas hasn't gotten past the divisional round that they can't, that they'll never do it. I actually like this Dallas team a lot. Since I came to you guys in the summer with the prediction that the team that I raised the most on, lowered the most on, the team that I raised the most on was the Dallas Cowboys. I think they are secretly a lot more loaded than people will give them credit for, and they're starting to reap a little bit of the benefits of the Micah Parsons trade. I just think that Green Bay ultimately would be healthy at this point, and they would have Parsons back. And if they have him back and they're healthy, you're talking then about a game in a dome with which Jordan Love has been pretty damn good throughout his career when weather conditions are in a dome or neutral or non-adverse. And I really like the Packers' chances here. especially after what happened to the Packers in the playoffs this past season with the ultimate collapse to Chicago. I just think it would be hard. It would be hard to keep them at bay because at this point in time, if they get fully healthy, as much as I do like Dallas, Green Bay has a better team and a better roster. You're talking about the team that after weeks 1, 2, and 3 last year, and really before Micah got hurt, were like the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl. And it's because they looked very good. And I don't expect Micah to be 100% even when he comes back, but I expect by playoffs, you're seeing the Micah Parsons that the Green Bay traded for. Then with New Orleans versus San Francisco, I'm even higher on the Saints than I was previous when I made this. I knew about the Lions and the Bengals schedules. I knew about the Saints schedule a little bit. I didn't realize that it was in that same echelon of Lions, Bengals, and Saints are significantly easier schedules than the rest. And I like Tyler Shook a lot too. However, I got Kyle Shanahan. In the playoffs. You guys know what I think of Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. And so I have the 49ers ultimately moving on, going into New Orleans and getting a win, and having success ultimately in a dome setting where I think they would do well. 49ers, can they get healthy? Will they stay healthy? Is the power plant next to Levi Stadium going to ruin them again? We will see. All right, I want to take a quick timeout before we move on to the championship rounds and talk about these schedules, because I just talked about them a little bit with the Lions and Saints and Bengals. I got some pushback in my previous videos about that it's a lazy take, that the fourth place schedule and the first place schedule doesn't matter and it only impacts 3 of the games. So an NFL season is a 17-game sample size. So 3 of your games being different is a massively significant number. It's more than 1/6, because 3 of 18 would be 1/6. So it's more than 1/6 of your games being different. When you look at who the teams then play, what divisions they play, for the Lions, this is the difference of they're playing the Arizona Cardinals, while the rest of the NFC North is playing the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. So the rest of the NFC North are playing Super Bowl contending teams, and the Lions are going to play a team who's contending for Tankamania for the number 1 overall pick in this upcoming draft, where we have a bunch of quarterbacks available. It's a huge difference. That's these playoff seedings and these who make the playoffs at the end of the years come down to 1 game. They come down to 11-6 versus 12-5, 11-6 versus 10-7, 10-7 versus 9-8. Overall, number 1 seed, 15-2 versus 14-3, 14-3 versus 13-4. 3 games being different is a massive impact, and it's why every single year you have 1.2 to 1.3 teams over the course of the past, since 2002, since we have the current playoff format, that go from worst to first in their division. Happens every single year. So I don't understand the sentiment that it isn't as impactful as it is. It's one of the most impactful things, and why the NFL has so much parity, because they do the scheduling the way that they do. So curious to hear your guys' thoughts, or maybe you guys could elaborate more or expand more on your reasoning versus just calling me an idiot. I would actually be interested to hear your thoughts. If you do think I'm wrong and you have anything intelligent to say, I'd be interested, because the data would say that you're wrong and I'm right. So curious. Okay, who wins these divisional round matchups? So we have the Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Chargers in Buffalo. Struggled with this one a bit too, and we flipped this. So we previously had the Ravens here, and the Ravens then moving on to play the Bills, and the Ravens beating the Bills. We had the Chargers then playing the Bengals, and the Chargers getting beat by the Bengals. Now it's flopped because Kansas City's in, so the Bengals are playing Kansas City, the Bills are playing the Chargers. I like the Chargers in the way that they would match up against this Bills team. Especially again with running ability, the offensive line from the Chargers side. Then the ability of the Chargers defense, who was one of the stingiest defenses last year, I do expect some drop off from that to now. And I expect the Bills to have a little bit of a regression on defense without Sean McDermott there and then moving to Joe Brady. I love Joe Brady, love what he does as an offensive play caller, liked what he did at LSU. Thought he got a bad rap when he went to the Carolina Panthers. There's a reason that the Bills brought him in. But I don't expect the Bills to really have the same physicality on defense this upcoming season as they previously had, and think that you're going to get Jim Harbaugh, coach, who has one of the highest winning percentages in the history of the NFL. You're getting him now in another year with Herbert under his wing. I think that the Chargers would get a win here over the number 1 seed. I don't like that spot for Buffalo, especially with the first-year head coach going up against Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, and think Justin Herbert finally kind of gets a little bit of his moment to shine and moves on to the AFC Championship round. Then we have what would I think be ultimately one of the best playoff games of the entire slate, and that's the Bengals and the Chiefs matching up again, something that they've already done two previous times. Yeah, Bengals winning against the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs winning against the Bengals the following year. With the Osai pushing Patrick Mahomes and getting the 15-yard penalty. Wild game. So what the Chiefs have done, they've made themselves a little bit weaker at cornerback with those cornerbacks moving onto the Rams. They're resetting a little bit while still trying to remain Super Bowl contenders with Mahomes, but exactly with which the areas and where they are resetting, I actually think matches up very well for what the Bengals have done. So the Bengals still remaining extremely prolific on the outside with their wide receivers, and then shoring up a little bit their interior run game. I think this matches up really well against what Kansas City will want to do this year. Still, jury's out on will Rashee Rice play, when's he going to play, all those things. So I'm very curious to see what the Chiefs are going to be offensively. Like, what's their run-pass breakdown going to be? How much are they going to rely on Mahomes to try and play hero ball like they did last year, versus how much are they going to have a little bit more of a sustained offense? Also curious to see if they sign Tyreek out of the offseason. If he ends up coming back healthy, let's say midway through the year, do they sign him to a veteran minimum? If they do that, then the Chiefs are going to be a little bit more formidable than they are currently. But right now, as I see them and as I see that roster, I actually like the way the Bengals match up. The Bengals will be at home in this game. Then we have a rematch for a third time between the Lions and the Packers. I expect these teams to split in the regular season, as they most often do. And I like the Lions to get a win here at home, avenging a little bit that time they had the number 1 overall seed 2 years ago and lost at home to the Washington Commanders. I think it'd be a very good game. These two teams always play very good games, but every offseason, like these teams, like as you would in any division, you kind of add and take pieces away in order to match up against your division opponents. The Lions doing this 100% with a little bit that they've done in the division against the Packers. So I like the ability of them really to exploit Green Bay in terms of their rush defense is the main reason that we like them here. Then the Rams and the 49ers, this was another one that was, I would say, almost as hard for me as Packers-Cowboys. The 49ers and Kyle Shanahan have a little bit of a history of owning Sean McVay and the Rams. It's a coaching matchup that they've excelled in. It's died down a little bit, but not a lot. Like, think back to last season when the 49ers were trotting like nobody out there and got that Thursday night win in overtime over the Rams. They find ways to beat the Rams even when they're a little bit behind in terms of have roster, team, or talent. I ultimately stuck with the Rams here, thinking that this is Stafford's last year. I do have concern with the Rams, especially like the whole Stafford. He was thought to be potentially done going into last season with the back injury, and then he was able to play, no problems, all that stuff. What if we get some of those injury issues back for him? But I just cannot pick against that Rams that Rams team. They're going to be at home, which is actually a home game for the 49ers, but I cannot pick against that loaded roster, especially if they get Darnold back. And I'm kind of, in my mind, the Rams are going to get Darnold back, even if it's not at the start of the season. They're going to have him for this playoff push. So then we have the AFC Championship game, Bengals-Chargers, NFC Championship game, Lions-Rams. Bengals taking on the Chargers. I struggled with this one quite a bit too now that I had this matchup, because the previous matchup I had the Bengals and the Ravens, where I really liked the Bengals in that, especially seeing them for a third time. In this one, I was going through this, saw some matchup advantages for the Chargers, especially outside run, so like off tackle run against the Bengals that I think the Chargers could exploit, then leading into a little bit of play action with Justin Herbert. On the defensive side, the Chargers have had an unbelievable pass defense, but this is again where I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. Even bringing back Derwin James and the secondary players that they do, I think when it comes to an elite passing attack like the Bengals, they are going to be a little bit more susceptible on that side. So from there, I like the Bengals still in this matchup, but out of any of them on here, this also was one of those ones where wouldn't surprise me at all if it happened and it went the other way, because I think the Chargers are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year. And then we have the same Super Bowl matchup as we had before, and we have the same winner for the same reasons. So Bengals-Rams matchup and what was a Super Bowl rematch in Super Bowl 61, also played at the same location in SoFi Stadium out in Los Angeles, home game for the Rams, except for this time we get a different winner. Bengals hosting the trophy, Joe Burrow hosting the trophy as Super Bowl MVP, and the Bengals host the Super Bowl trophy because I like what they can do on a offensive standpoint. My dog entered the room. Hello, Bruce. What they can do from a offensive standpoint, even against a Rams team that loaded up what they did at cornerback. And again, this is a little bit of the Joe Burrow gamer theory. If he gets this late in the playoffs, he's very, very difficult to beat. Probably only got beat the first time around because of a phantom holding. Well, I'm not going to call it a phantom holding call, but a holding call that probably should have been flag left in the pocket. So we like the Bengals in a rematch here, and what would be a historic NFL season and NFL playoffs. Thank you guys very much. Please did the same thing. We updated our college football playoff bracket. Go take a look at that video. Also gave you guys some of the weeks 0, week 1 in college, and week 1 in NFL lines that we're eyeing. So go take a look at that video. And then again, just make sure you're helping us grow the channel. The way the YouTube algorithm works is, are your subscribers watching your content when they like it? Are they watching it all the way through, and are they liking it? So make sure you're subscribed, like the video. We will never charge for our picks. We're getting ready to give out a bunch of those upcoming every NFL game, as well as a bunch of our college games. 2 years of a proven track record publicly of a profitable units record, 5 years in which I've been running the system, all 5 years profitable. We'll never charge for the picks, just ask that you guys do your part and help us grow the channel. Appreciate you very much. We are 6 days away from football. Hell yeah.